What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they enjoyed a very nice weekend of some very good football from their homes. I think it was a gift from the Pittsburgh Steelers to schedule a Thursday night game as we got to watch good game after good game after good game, highlighted by former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Josh Dobbs leading the Minnesota Vikings to a win over the Atlanta Falcons in a way that I think stunned, shocked, and excited the internet. It was a good weekend. It's a beautiful day here in the Berg, even if it is a little chilly outside. How are you feeling, my friend?
I feel good. I'm fired up for it. Like you said, Josh Dobbs, man, that one of the most, I feel like, universally beloved guys in the NFL right now. Like, people love a good backup quarterback. People love when a good backup quarterback plays well. So like that was exciting. That was really cool.
Yeah, it really was. I think, I mean, like him going to Minnesota, I had expectations he'd become the starter. The way that it happened, and then to win that football game the way that he did win the football game, like seemingly taken over after a rough start, 0 days of practice. I mean, that dude's awesome. Like, I hope he earns something there. I don't know if he's the guy, but I hope he continues to be the guy for right now in Minnesota.
Right. We were watching the start of that game with some people, and I turned to someone. I said, "Who the hell is this starting for the Vikings? Why is it not Josh Dobbs?" I thought they were like, "He's been there for 3 days. There's no way he's starting." And then he comes in and he balls out. It was perfect.
Yeah. You can't ask many people who aren't a rocket scientist to go into a team and learn their entire offense in seemingly like 25 seconds before you walk into a ball game. There was no way that anybody else could do that. But shout out Josh Dobbs. Great story. I hope the success continues because that guy, like you said, beloved figure in the NFL right now, beloved figure in Pittsburgh, I believe, and definitely should be. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, bit of a headline-filled weekend. Not really the winning mentality that you wanted to carry up until Monday morning. After the game, we talked about it. George Pickens a little upset on the sideline. Didn't seem to be enjoying the fact that Deontay Johnson scored his first touchdown in 668 days, or that the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Tennessee Titans. Seemed more frustrated in the fact that he was struggling, that he wasn't getting the football as much as maybe he believed that he should be getting the football. Afterwards, or I guess seemingly the next day, he deletes all of his activity on Instagram. Everything except for one post, everything related to the Pittsburgh Steelers or him in a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. He quickly posts it was a meme, but under the meme, he wrote "free me," deleted that within like minutes. Obviously, it was caught by fans and media and everybody else, so that blew up. And then there was speculation, this is not confirmed, and I don't think it could be confirmed, that he unfollowed Kenny Pickett, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Mike Tomlin on Instagram. Since then, his posts have gone back up, at least some of them, including a highlight, a little minute-long highlight of him and Kenny Pickett. I don't know if that's him. Like, I looked at it two ways. I said, hey, maybe this is George Pickens kind of clearing his mind, taking a reset, saying I played poorly the last 2 weeks. Maybe it's time to figure some things out. Let's clear the Instagram. Let's start over. There was also a part of me that when somebody called him immediately and said, dude, what are you doing? Stop this. And he put some stuff back on. Your thoughts on a very wild weekend for George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers offense?
Yeah, I think when you see something like this, you try not to read too much into it. Like, people can do whatever they want with their social media, and that's their business. It really shouldn't be something that becomes like a big topic for us, I feel like. But I don't know. It was this combined with his reactions, I feel like, on the sideline on Thursday night that just makes you think about it a little bit more. I don't think George like hates his teammates or anything like that, but he certainly is frustrated, and he's not doing a great job, I think, of hiding that. And again, I think we talked about this on the last episode, but I don't really get what he's frustrated about. Yeah, he had a bad game. He just didn't get involved a whole lot. But for this whole season, he's been the go-to guy, like consistently over and over again. And just this way of like demonstrating his frustration, I don't feel like is particularly productive, you know? Like if he's
Yes.
worried about his targets, if he's worried about the way the offense is going, there are different ways to show you're frustrated that involve, being involved with your teammates, talking to them, going over stuff with your coaches. Matt Canada was on the sideline. If he was frustrated with the way that game was going and how he was being used, the guy who dictates that, the two guys who dictate that, Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada, are right there on the sideline with him. Like he has an open line of communication with these guys, and if he really wants to, I think, be a productive member of the team and try to get this unit moving in the right direction, there are ways to do that that just aren't like, I guess we can call it like a social media outburst. I mean,
Yeah.
is that like that feel like a fair way of describing it? Like it was, I don't know. It's I think I understand it to a certain degree, but I don't think it's gonna help anything for him to do this. And maybe that's what, like you referenced someone calling him saying, stop doing this, man. Like that's probably what that conversation entailed.
Yeah, I would imagine an agent or somebody was just like, "Hey, look, this is not the right time to be doing this." If that's what happened, and I agree with you, like you try real hard not to look into these things, but at the same time, when they start adding up, typically you could kind of connect the dots, and I think that's where we are with George Pickens. It's definitely concerning. I do, I like the fact that he put some things back up. I think a lot of guys would be a little bit more hard nosed and say, "Nah, sorry, that's not happening. I'm standing my ground here for whatever reason." But I also don't know I don't know what the objective is. I don't know what the goal is by that, to just say like, "Hey, I'm super frustrated, but it's past the trade deadline. You're not going to get released. You're a second year star wide receiver. Like that would never happen in a million years." I just don't see how lashing out on social media does anybody, including yourself, any good at this point in the season and where we are in the timeline of the year. I just don't think that works. I mean, I look at it and I'm trying to tell myself that I'm wrong and that, maybe I'm overlooking this a little bit. He's starting a war, if he is starting a war, with the wrong person. And I think that that's what the biggest issue is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that you can't start a war with your quarterback in the NFL. Like that doesn't happen. Even if George Pickens is a superstar, and he is a superstar, and I think that he's shown like how good and even just like a baseline level of how good he can be. Like I think he could be one of, if not the best wide receivers in the NFL one day. The problem is that in the NFL, this is a business and the quarterback wins every single time. Even if your quarterback is a giant question mark and you don't know if he's the franchise and you don't know how long he's going to be here and you have serious concerns about his accuracy or this or that, it doesn't matter. He's a first-round quarterback. He will win that war every single time without having to do anything. The Pittsburgh Steelers will always be on his side because that's how every single team would be. Wide receivers do not win teams Super Bowls. Quarterbacks do. So if you're going to rock with either side, you're going to pick your quarterback. I hope that I'm wrong there, but if it is, like you're looking at another AB Ben Roethlisberger situation, you're looking at another, Mike Wallace AB situation. All these guys where they thought that they could lash out and make things known that they were frustrated, and it clearly didn't work in their favor, and it won't work in their favor again. Do you expect it to stop? Like, do you expect this to just be over? Like now that we go in, because we're going to go in today, we're going to talk to them. Guarantee you one of two things happens. Either, and this is the easiest guarantee ever, but George Pickens is either going to address the media and he's going to address the issues and he's going to tell us this is nothing, whatever, who cares, or he is going to be a total no-show. He's not going to be there. We're not going to even know that he's in the building. Just like after the game, that guy was in and out of the locker room in like seconds. Like I didn't see a jersey. I don't even know if he took his pads off, but I do know he was nowhere to be found for an hour after that game. I think one of those two things happened. But do you think this like just goes away? Do you think this is just a no big deal after today?
Yes, to a certain extent, I do. Because this kind of thing happened last week. It happened earlier this year. There was a social media incident, or just kind of, a George Pickens is upset kind of moment. Like, and then it just kind of came and went. And like no one really said anything about it. No one seemed to express any kind of concern about it. So I have to imagine this will follow a similar pattern. He's going to have to face it at some point. He's going to have to address it at some point. I'm I lean more to the side that he's going to avoid it for as long as he can, you know?
Yes.
Like he's not going to, I wouldn't expect to see him today. I wouldn't expect to talk to him today, but I feel like at some point this week,
does that raise more questions to you? Like if George doesn't speak today, are you more concerned about the situation? Or do you have different thoughts?
No, I think George just doesn't like to talk to the media. I think that's
that part's very true.
Yeah, so I wouldn't. I mean, that's not out of the ordinary at all. You know, the timing may make it seem that way, but I just think he just doesn't like talking to people.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He hates us.
Yeah. So I don't read too much into it that way, but I do think he is going to avoid you for as much as he can.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that definitely. I think that. Oh, man, I think from a PR standpoint, like me and you could understand that. And I think a lot of other people will understand that as well. Like, yeah, George just doesn't want to talk to, he never wants to talk to us. Like the guy hides from the media all the time, which is like, I get it. Like, who cares, man? I'm not the person to go into a locker room. And there are a lot of people who are like, this guy hasn't talked in a week. I'm like, what do you like? You know, you're going to go drag him into the center of the locker room and talk to him. Like, if he doesn't want to talk to us, he doesn't want to talk to us. Who cares? Like with this, it's a little different. I understand, but I think that settling it the earlier, the better in this situation. If he doesn't, there will be some people. Like, I'm not saying most people. I'm not saying me and you. I'm not saying, most Steelers fans. I'm just saying there will be some people who are sitting around going, this guy's avoiding it because he's pissed. He doesn't want anything. This is real. This guy hates Kenny Pickett. He hates Matt Canada. And that's going to be an issue. It's also going to start a huge debate because I put out my to-go this morning, and my to-go was about this situation, and it was very frank. Like, if George Pickens wants to start a war with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and especially his quarterback, he's going to lose that war, unfortunately, just because that's the business of the NFL. And there were already, I try very hard not to check the YouTube comments. As I try to check them like once a day and just sift through the positive ones. I checked them this morning just to see where people lie in the situation, and it was 50% people saying the Steelers would never get rid of George Pickens over Kenny Pickett, and then 50% of the people saying, yeah, you're probably right. You get rid of the wide receiver before you get rid of the quarterback every single time. It's gonna divide a fan base. Like, it's gonna become a little bit of a hot topic and a debate, I guess. It's just all around. Like, it's a bad place to be for 5-3. You just beat the Titans. Like, you're leaving this game. You're leaving this weekend. You're in such a good spot. You're in a playoff spot. The whole AFC North is looking real good right now, and you are 2-0 in the division. And then this is the highlight. It's just not a good place to be.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily buy that it's gonna get to that point, like where it's dividing a fan base and it becomes this whole thing. But I think I generally agree that this is just not where you would like to be after a very positive win, and you have some good momentum. Like I agree with that. That's not, you'd find like the Jaguars loss, I felt like dragged everyone down to a pretty low place, and then you finally bring them all back with a solid win over the Titans, and you head into two really crucial division games. I feel like you want everything there. You don't want to I don't know. You don't want any distractions. You don't want to feel like your mind is anywhere besides on these two really important games going forward. So I understand that to a certain degree. I don't think we're there yet where we're like tearing down.
Where it's going to be a war.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a war yet, but I guess it could get there at some point. But
yeah, I hope. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm being a little over dramatic. I hope you're very right in the situation. I think it's concerning. I hope it dies off into nothing. I'm sure. At bare minimum, we're going to get Kenny on Wednesday, and he will say, "Yeah, me and George love each other. Blah blah blah. This is it." So it'll dim down there. What's happening internally? That's a totally different question. Very interested to get to the stadium, to get to the facility today, and see what's going on. Because I heard you got to remember back when AB, and I don't want to compare George to AB because I don't think they're even close to similar. But back when the AB situation did happen and he just stopped showing up, people just showed up on Tuesday or Wednesday and AB wasn't there. Like, it was just like, where's Antonio Brown? Nobody knows. And then he just didn't show up the whole week. Showed up like an hour before kickoff, and that was the end of AB in Pittsburgh. That was the last time he didn't even put on a uniform, but that was the end of the line, and you just didn't even see it coming. It came out of nowhere. That's how quickly these things develop. So it is a story to watch, concerning, but hopefully nothing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hopefully just a reset mentally for George Pickens and something that, on Wednesday we could be like, all right, this is stupid. Let's carry on to other things. All right, moving on. The Pittsburgh Steelers lost their inside linebacker on Thursday. Cole Holcomb had surgery, or is set to have surgery. Will miss the remainder of the season after a real gruesome knee injury. Thoughts and prayers to Cole Holcomb, obviously. The Pittsburgh Steelers got to replace an inside linebacker, a guy that was playing very well up until this point, that was, a leader, especially with the communication in the middle of that defense. They'll move to Quan Alexander and Landon Roberts. Mark Robinson is also on the team. Before we get into ways that the Pittsburgh Steelers could add to their inside linebacker room, how big of a blow is this to their defense, and can they overcome it easily with the Landon Roberts and Quan Alexander, or is it going to be a pretty tall task?
Well, it's a huge loss. Like you said, Cole had been playing really well, which is just funny to think about. Like, I think, at the beginning of training camp, we were watching him get torched by Calvin Austin while we were wearing shorts, and we're like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And we got proven. I got proven wrong pretty quickly. So Cole's been really good. This is a huge loss, but I mean, this is why you have both Landon Roberts, and then you went to get Quan Alexander later. I think calling it an easy thing to overcome, I don't think that's necessarily fair, but I do think the Steelers are built as a roster to overcome this loss better than another team might. They've got some good depth there. You need to plug some smaller holes in the process, but I feel like, at the very top end of their depth chart at linebacker, they're really well positioned to handle this loss, because I think Quan had been playing really well too. I mean, Landon Roberts have been solid as well. Like, they've got 3 starter capable inside linebackers. So it's just about managing their workload so that, as they get down the home stretch of the season, you're not, putting too much on Landon Roberts, who we were talking before, plays special teams too. Like, this is, you don't want to put too much on their plate as they try to make up for a pretty big loss in the middle there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's of all the positions, it's probably the best one to suffer an injury at if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, but just like who it was, like Holcomb was the guy. He was the 3 down inside linebacker. He was the guy that you could use in run support and as a coverage option. He was playing real well, like we said. Like, yeah, it is a huge blow for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they do have Quan. I expect Quan to, I think Quan's played very well throughout the season, just like you said. He could step in and be your coverage guy. He could be your 3 down linebacker. I think he's proven that in the NFL. Landon Roberts all 3 of them have been listed as a starter every single week. So, and they've been introduced as a starter every single week. So I don't expect that I don't expect you to notice a downgrade. Like, I don't expect them to take a drop in success at inside linebacker. I think the bigger question is, how ready is Mark Robinson to start filling a role there and be a contributor on defense? Do the Pittsburgh Steelers have to find another coverage guy? Because right now, Quan is really your only option, and Mark Robinson just isn't that. And at the same time, how healthy is Minkah Fitzpatrick? How soon is he going to come back? Because if you could get Minkah back, you can start utilizing Keanu Neal as an inside linebacker a little bit more. And I don't think that's like the Steelers' top option, but I do think it is an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the injury to Cole Holcomb. So Mark Robinson, expecting him to kind of be in the fold. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they signed former Atlanta Falcons, I hope I'm saying this first name right, Michael Walker, to their practice squad last week. This is a guy that started 12 games for the Atlanta Falcons last season. He is a 4th-round pick in the 2020 draft for them. He's played at least 16 games his first 3 seasons in the league. He's got 107 tackles last year, 1 sack, 6 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions, 4 tackles for loss for the Falcons. When he was released, it was just a giant question mark. You read reports from the AP. There was no explanation given on why they moved on from him, and it doesn't seem to be an injury or anything. He was on another practice squad this season, so it's still a little surprising that he hasn't been on an active roster, and it's week 10 in the NFL. The Steelers could call him up. Do you expect that to happen? And do you look at that as a viable enough option for the Steelers to say, okay, we're okay, we can move forward with these 4 guys?
I mean, it seems like they kind of have to call him up. Like, at the very least, to be a body on special teams and take something off of a Landon Roberts and Mark Robinson's plate, like we said, so that they are, kind of fully focused on being the guys who can fill in for Cole Holcomb. But I this seems like a player that could be pretty reliable for them. I mean,
Yeah.
like he was a starter in the NFL last year and a pretty good one at that. He's pretty young. He's only 26 years old. I like former 4th round pick. Like there's a lot to like about Michael Walker here. So I would expect them to call them up, and it seems like a little bit of a no brainer, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have a free spot at linebacker. This seems like the best linebacker on the practice squad available right now, and the rest of the free agent market for linebackers is not very promising at all. So this seems like your best bet if you're the Steelers right now.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you just don't, you look at the free agents just available right now, there's really almost none. Like, you could make a call to Nick Kwiatkowski if you want to, I guess. I don't even know if he's healthy right now. Besides that, you got almost nobody. Yeah, I mean, you could call John Bostic if you want John Bostic back on the team, but I don't know what he offers that a Mark Robinson doesn't, and I don't know his special teams value. I think the fact that Walker is 26 years old, like you said, plays a huge factor in this. 2 seasons ago, he played 73% of the team's defensive snaps or special team snaps. So I feel like that is huge as well. I think that it's a good option. It's not your, clearly it's still a downgrade from Cole Holcomb, but somehow the Steelers lucked into this one. Like, they signed him 2 days before the game and they lose their starting inside linebacker. And now they have an option to call up from the practice squad and say, hey, well, you just got to be inside linebacker 4. This is fine. And then maybe they move forward. I don't mind the pick, like we said, or mind the signing if that's the way that they go. Like we said, it's still a downgrade. It still stinks that Holcomb will miss that time, but they do have, like, it's crazy to think about. A year ago, if this would have happened, I mean, there's nothing. The Steelers would have been in the worst situation of all time. They already were. Like, you think about a year ago where it's Robert Spillane, Miles Jack, Devin Bush with Mark Robinson filling in and working his way into a starting role by the end of the season. This year, it's Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Quan Alexander, and you lose an inside linebacker, and you still have a guy in the practice squad who started 12 games last season and looked pretty okay that you could call up to your right. Like, shout out Omar Khan, man. That guy,
Yeah.
sneaky good moves sometimes that you don't get to appreciate until bad things happen, and you're like, oh wow, look at this. Like, how far he's come in such a short time, just in one position. So yeah, hopefully that's the move. We'll see what happens. I'm sure a move will be made either today or probably tomorrow, depending on how they view the situation and when they announce Holcomb's going to end up on IR. Last thing I want to talk about, former Pittsburgh Steeler Martavis Bryant, back in the NFL, reinstated after 4 years of being suspended for violating the league's substance abuse policy, multiple failed drug tests. In the words of Stephen A. Smith, the guy could not stay off the weed. It was an issue. He's back. He's 31 years old. According to reports everywhere, there will be interest from him or for him from a number of teams. He's set to work out with the Dallas Cowboys on Tuesday. I mean, the big question here, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they got a couple of wide receivers, but I don't think anybody outside of their top 2, and then Calvin Austin, obviously, are like big, giant splash wide receivers. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers consider bringing back an old friend, former 4th-round pick out of Clemson, who definitely did some good things during his time in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. Well, I feel like you certainly gotta give him a tryout if he wants it. Like that feels like the right thing to do. I don't know. I think they'll give him a look. I don't know how serious of a look that'll be, but I just think it's interesting that there is going to be actual interest for him. Just a guy who's been out of the league for how long? 7 years, you said?
4 years. 4 years.
4 years. Ooh, not that long. But still, 4 years is a 4 years is a long time. To miss time in the NFL, and I mean, especially at receiver, where I mean that doesn't necessarily that's not a position that I feel like necessarily ages super well.
No.
And so staying out of the league for that long is not great. But if there's interest, I have to believe there's still something there. So I think you at least give him a look. I mean, you at least, because like you said, I mean, look, even Calvin Austin, like that's not. You've really got two receivers that you feel like are real parts of the passing game. Like Allen Robinson, I feel like has been a little disappointing so far this year. But I mean that's part of just the entire offense being a little slow. To start this year. I mean, Calvin Austin has been hit or miss too. So, having one more impact wide receiver is not the worst thing in the world if Martavis Bryant could actually end up being that. I'm not super sure, but it doesn't cost you anything to look at him.
Yeah, I agree. Like I just look at it right now, like Miles Boykin, and shout out Miles Boykin. That guy is, you keep Miles Boykin around as long as he wants to stay here for how good of a special teams player he is. But he caught a pass on Thursday night against the Titans. Like at that point, what's the difference?
That shouldn't happen. Yeah,
that's
like
not,
that's
why
not
not
ideal. Yeah.
No, why not just bring in Bryant and see what happens? I think that's the thing is like, you don't have to sign him. This isn't a guarantee. But if there's interest from a couple of teams, he's going to go through workouts. Nobody's just like, oh, man, dude, did you hear Martavis Bryant's back in the league? 4 years, we're calling him. Did you hear what he did in the XFL last year? I mean, we got to give him a contract. No, they're going to go through workouts. It's going to be a slow process. And maybe he lands in Dallas in the next, 48 hours. But I think that's jumping the gun. Even if you're Bryant, I think that's also jumping the gun. Like, see where your interest is, see where you could land and kind of weigh your options instead of just diving into a team that is already loaded with wide receivers. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, just like you said, Allen Robinson's been fine, but nothing crazy. And I don't think you even replace Allen Robinson. I just think that maybe you add to the group. Why not? You had Gunnar Olszewski all season long to start the year, and you didn't not have another wide receiver. You just rocked with 6 wide receivers. Just do it again. See if that's an option for you. See if he still has the speed that you want to have. I mean, you got to remember when he was good and when he was healthy and he wasn't suspended and getting in all that trouble, he was good in Pittsburgh. He was
really good. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like the dude had spark. Everybody loved him around here. There was no major complaints outside of the fact that the guy just couldn't stay out of trouble. I mean, why not? What's a guy like that cost?
Right.
$700,000. Cool. Right. Sounds good.
Yeah. And I mean, for the trouble the guy got in was smoking weed. Like, come on.
You could do that now.
Right. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, I think this is absolutely where, I don't know, in a fun little, I don't know. I feel like for Martavis too, this is a little bit of a tall task, this is a big, this is a big thing for him, it's a situation that I feel like he's going to want to handle really delicately, and maybe coming back to a place that is somewhat familiar with the coach who's familiar with the coach who clearly liked him when he was younger. I think those relationships will matter for someone who's in this type of situation and trying to make a comeback like this. So I feel like it could be kind of a win-win for both parties involved, and it could be really beneficial to just have that relationship back for both sides.
Yes, I agree. That's such a good point. If you are trying to make an NFL comeback, the Pittsburgh Steelers have proven that they are very loyal to their players, that they will give you as many chances and tries as you need to succeed. If you're Martavis Bryant, Dallas is not known for the same things. So if you're going to pick a team, and I'm not saying that that's the only two options, I'm sure there will be other options, but if you're Martavis Bryant, you have to put into consideration, maybe it's going to take me a little while to kind of adjust back to the NFL after playing in the CFL and the XFL where the talent level isn't the same. Pittsburgh is going to give me that opportunity to kind of, adjust and see where I stand in the NFL after 4 years away from it. And I think that could make a world of difference for a guy trying to make an NFL comeback. Spot on. We'll see what happens. I'm sure that there'll be more news on him in the next 24, 48 hours and definitely by Wednesday, but definitely a name to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't see why you wouldn't at least give him a try. And if he, makes a phone call and says, hey, coach, remember me? 4th round pick guy who, I caught the ball with my butt that one time. We should see what happens here. And I think the Steelers should say, most certainly come in for a workout. All right. With that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Find us Find us wherever you get your podcasts and check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pick coverage at insidethepanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.